My name is Mabeline Ruth Carter, but most folks just call me May. I'm 83 years old. I've lived in Maple Hollow, a quiet little town in Indiana, for most of my life. I used to believe home was where the heart is, but these days, I wonder if I ever truly had one. It was raining hard that night. Not the soft kind either, the kind that soaks through your bones and makes the sky feel angry at you. I stood on the front porch of the house I helped build, barefoot, with nothing but a small overnight bag and the wool coat I bought 20 years ago from a church thrift sale. I was shivering, but it wasn't just from the cold. "I told you, May," my daughter Lorene hissed from behind the door. "You can't stay here anymore. Jeremiah says it's not good for the kids to see you like this, always moping around, making us feel guilty." I looked at her through the crack in the door, blinking against the rain, my voice barely a whisper. "Lorene, this is my home. I raised you here." She didn't even meet my eyes. "You're not well. You need help, but not from us." And just like that, the door slammed shut. The porch light flicked off. And I was alone. I stood there, heart pounding like a war drum, as the storm howled above. 8 decades of memories, mistakes, sacrifices, all cast aside like I was an old bag of laundry. I wanted to scream, but instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat. I turned slowly and stepped off the porch, the rain now mixing with tears on my cheeks. I walked down that gravel path I laid with my late husband, Eldon, 37 years ago. It felt like each stone remembered me and cried for me too. But this wasn't the worst thing Lorene had done. Not by far. You see, I haven't told you about what she really did. Not yet. Not the part that started it all. Not the secret so dark it kept me quiet for over 60 years. Not the truth about how my own mother sold me and how Lorene finished the job. And as I walked away from that house that night, clutching a picture of my firstborn in my coat pocket, I knew. It was time to stop surviving. It was time to start remembering. Because the story wasn't over. Not even close. It was the summer of 1946, and I was just 14. We lived deep in the Appalachian foothills of Kentucky, on a ragged stretch of farmland where the air always smelled of sweat, smoke, and sorrow. Back then, we didn't have electricity. We didn't even have a proper floor. Just packed dirt, a few patched-up blankets, and a mother with a heart colder than the creek that ran behind the house. Her name was Unetta, and even now I choke saying it. She was my mother only by blood, never by kindness. She had me when she was barely 16, and by the time I was born, her bitterness had already bloomed into something cruel and permanent. One evening, she called me out to the barn. It was quiet out, too quiet for summer. I remember how the sun hung low, golden and burning like it was watching everything that was about to happen. I walked barefoot through the overgrown grass, my toes damp with dew, and saw 2 men waiting beside our mule stall. One was Mr. Renley, a tobacco farmer from 3 ridges over. The other, I didn't recognize, tall, bony, and wearing a black hat too big for his narrow face. Unetta didn't even look at me, just lit a cigarette and said, "You'll be leaving with them, Mabeline. They paid good money." I blinked. Leaving? Where? For how long? She exhaled smoke in my direction, like I was some kind of nuisance. "Ain't you always whining about being hungry? Well, now you'll earn your own bread. You got a woman's body. They need help on the farm." Her voice cut like rusted wire. "Ain't my job to keep feedin' no free mouths." I turned to run, but Renley grabbed my arm. "Best not make it harder, girl." That was the first night I slept in a barn that wasn't ours. On someone else's land. In someone else's hands. The tall man, his name was Arlen, and he didn't waste time. That first week, I cooked, cleaned, and fed chickens until my fingers bled. But it wasn't the chores that scarred me. It was what happened after sunset. They didn't see me as a child. They didn't see me as human. I don't remember the first time I screamed. I only remember how quickly I learned to stop screaming. Because out there in the woods, screams don't bring help. They only make the monsters angry. The years blurred together. My body grew up before my mind could catch up. And before I turned 17, I'd already given birth to 2 babies. The first was taken before I ever got to hold him. The second, Eli, I named him in secret. I rocked him on quiet nights when the house finally went still, singing him lullabies no one ever sang to me. But they took him, too. They always took them. No records. No birth certificates. Just gone, like whispers in the wind. I became a womb.
A tool.
And every time I gave birth, I lost a piece of myself. 10 children in total. All vanished into the world like I was a factory, not a mother. I prayed every night until I stopped believing God was listening. But one day, something changed. I met someone. A man with soft eyes and a quiet heart. A farmhand named Eldon Carter, who spoke to me like I was made of something precious, not property. He knew. He saw it in my eyes. He didn't ask questions. He just whispered, "You don't belong here." And he was right.
So we ran.
But running doesn't mean escaping, not when the trauma is stitched into your bones. Now, sitting in the dark of a rundown diner 60 years later, sipping watered-down coffee and trying to stay warm, I remember that night in the barn. I remember the smell of hay, the ache in my chest, and the name of every child they took from me. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of remembering. Because this time, I'm going to tell it all. Eldon Carter was 26 when I met him. Strong hands, gentle eyes. The kind of man who didn't flinch when I told him pieces of my truth, though back then, I could barely speak above a whisper. We married in a small church in North Vernon, Indiana. Just us, a borrowed suit, and a white dress that cost $3 from a pawn shop. I wasn't looking for fairy tales. I just wanted peace. A place where no one touched me without permission. A home that smelled of coffee and safety. Eldon gave me that. He never asked me about the babies. He just held me every night when I woke up screaming and whispered, "You're here now. They can't reach you anymore." For the first time in my life, I believed it. In 1960, we had our first and only child. A baby girl we named Lorraine. I held her so tight. I was afraid I might break her. She was soft, with little curls and eyes that reminded me of the second baby I'd birthed back in Kentucky. But this time, no one could take her from me. I promised myself, I will give her the love I never had. I will never let the past touch her. I will be the mother I wished I had. And I was. I stayed home and raised her while Eldon worked odd jobs. We never had much, but what we lacked in money, we gave in warmth. I sewed her clothes, sang her lullabies every night, and packed her lunch with handwritten notes until she was 13. She was my son, my only chance at healing, my redemption. But something shifted as she grew. Maybe it was me, maybe it was her. Maybe love, no matter how pure, can't fill every crack. Lorraine grew up seeing me as overbearing, too soft, too quiet. She wanted polish and power, things I never knew how to offer. She didn't like our small house or Eldon's old pickup or the secondhand Christmas gifts. I remember when she was 17, she said it plain. "I don't want to end up like you, Mom."
Trapped. Weak. Poor. I didn't answer her that day.
I just smiled and kissed her forehead. But inside, it crushed me. She didn't see strength in my survival, only shame in my scars. She got a scholarship to a college in Illinois. I was proud, so proud I could barely breathe when we waved goodbye. I thought she'd come back better, wiser,
Kinder.
But she came back with Jeremiah, a man with money,
Charm.
and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was the kind of man that made you feel small with compliments. "You look nice today, May, for someone your age. You're lucky to have a daughter like Lorraine to take care of you." At first, I ignored it. I thought he'd grow on me. But the way he spoke to Lorraine, the way she started parroting him, calling me forgetful, saying I was too emotional, that I dwelled too much in the past. They moved into our family home after Eldon passed. My Eldon, the only man who ever truly saw me. He died in his sleep, holding my hand. I thought Lorraine would comfort me. Instead, she came in with papers.
Deeds.
Words like power of attorney. And one by one, she stripped the home of everything that mattered. Photos, quilts, my music box from Eldon. She replaced them with granite countertops and smart TVs. I had become a guest in my own home. A ghost. Until the night they kicked me out. But they don't know what I've kept. They don't know about the red tin box in the attic. They don't know that inside are the birth certificates I stole over the years. That each child I bore under Arlen's roof had a name.
A date.
That somewhere out there, my children live. And I am going to find them. Because Lorene thinks she buried my past. But all she did was light the fuse. I didn't go to a shelter that night. I went to Miss Adeline's diner, an old 24-hour joint that still served pancakes after midnight and never judged who walked through the door. The owner, Adeline, had known Eldon and me since the 70s. She didn't say much when I stumbled in soaked and shaking, just handed me a cup of hot coffee and the keys to the storage room in the back. "You stay as long as you need, May," she said gently, placing a worn blanket over my shoulders. "And don't you dare worry about paying. I got you." I barely slept that night. My bones ached, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from everything I had buried too long finally clawing its way to the surface. By dawn, I knew where I had to go. I returned to my house, the house that used to be mine. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't try the front door. I snuck around the back, through the overgrown garden, and found the old storm window I used to clean every Saturday. It was still loose in the corner. Eldon had promised to fix it, but never did. Funny how little things become lifelines. I slid inside quietly. The place had changed. Lorene had turned our home into a cold magazine spread. There were no family pictures anymore, just metal sculptures, flat-screen TVs, and a digital fireplace that hummed instead of crackled. I didn't care about any of that. I went straight to the attic. The pull-down ladder creaked under my weight, and dust swirled around me like old ghosts. But I knew exactly where to look. Behind the rusted trunk, under a floorboard Eldon and I had pried loose once during a storm, was a red tin box with a faded sunflower on the lid. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were a few photos, wrapped in an old dish towel. A small crucifix. A baby rattle that no longer made a sound. And beneath those, 10 sheets of paper, yellowed with time, but still legible. Each one held a name. A date, a weight, a faint signature from the county doctor who oversaw the births. They told me the children were dead, but the record said otherwise. Some had been quietly adopted, others listed only as transferred. A few were sent across state lines. I had managed to smuggle these papers out bit by bit when no one was looking, folded in the hem of my dress, hidden in books beneath floorboards. One name jumped out at me. Ezekiel Arlen Renley. Born 1951.
Male.
Transferred to West Virginia. Father, unknown. Mother, May Ruth Carter. My son, the only one whose file had a stamp seal that said, "Record reopened. Inquiry filed, 1996. I froze. Someone had been looking for me. My knees buckled and I sank to the floor, clutching the paper to my chest. After decades of silence, this single name felt like thunder in my heart. I wasn't forgotten. One of them, maybe all of them, might still be out there. Alive.
Searching.
Waiting. Suddenly, the attic door creaked. A voice drifted up from below. "Mom?" It was Lorene. She must have heard something. I shoved the documents into my coat pocket, pressed the red box back beneath the floorboard, and stepped silently to the corner behind the insulation. My heart pounded like a drum, but I didn't move. I didn't speak. After a minute, she called out again, less curious this time, more annoyed. Guess it was nothing. The attic door slammed shut. I waited another 10 minutes, then slipped out the same way I came in. By the time the sun hit the horizon, I was back at Miss Adeline's with a plan. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about finding the children they stole from me. About unearthing every secret that was meant to stay buried. About facing the past, even if it burned me alive. And if Ezekiel was looking for me, I was going to let him know. Mama never stopped looking either. The morning after I found Ezekiel's name, I borrowed a pen, a yellow legal pad, and a roll of stamps from Miss Adeline. She offered to help me search online, but I told her this part. I needed to do the old way. I couldn't call them. couldn't just show up. I didn't even know where most of them were. But I could write.
So I did.
10 letters. One for each of my babies. I started with Ezekiel. Dear Ezekiel, I don't know what name they gave you. I only know the one I whispered when I held you in the barn, your little fists clenched and your cry already strong like a storm. They told me you died, but I never believed them. I felt you leave that place. I felt it in my bones. I am your mother. I never stopped being her. Not even when they stripped you from my arms. Not even when they told me to forget. I remember your weight, your smell, the heat of your breath on my neck. If you ever wondered where you came from, why your mother never came,
Please no. They sold me.
but I survived. And I'm looking for you now. Love always. Mama May, asterisk, asterisk. By noon, my hand was cramping, but I kept going. Eli,
Delia.
Nora, Silas,
Tobiah.
Winnie, Joseph, Clara, and baby Zane. I didn't have addresses, only hospital codes, towns, or foster system notations. So I mailed each letter to the state archives where the birth certificate was filed, labeled Closed Adoption Inquiry, Historical Biological Request, on the envelope. Was it legal? Maybe not. Did I care? Absolutely not. This was my blood. My life. My story. When I finished the last letter, I walked the 3 miles to the post office in town. I didn't trust anyone else to send them. I placed each one carefully into the blue mailbox and whispered each name again, like a prayer. But as I dropped the last one, Clara's letter, something fluttered out. A photo, one I hadn't seen in decades. It was folded behind Clara's file in the red tin box, and I must have slipped it in without noticing. It was a faded Polaroid of a little girl no older than 7, sitting on the steps of what looked like a children's home. There was handwriting on the back. Clara, May 1967, St. Althea's Orphanage, Charleston, West Virginia. My breath caught. It was her. She had my nose, my eyes. And next to her, in the corner of the photo, was a boy maybe 9 or 10, with a serious face and a birthmark under his left eye. My hands began to shake, because I had a birthmark in the exact same spot. And so did baby Silas when he was born. My children, they were together, in the same place. Someone had kept them together. Suddenly, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I ran back to the diner, clutching the photo like a lifeline. Miss Adeline met me at the door, startled. May, what on earth? I need a phone, I panted. And a list of orphanages. I need to find St. Althea's. She blinked, then nodded without a word. Within minutes, she had pulled up records on her tablet. Most homes like that were shut down long ago. But St. Althea's, it turned out, had merged with a church-run care center just outside Charleston. A place called New Mercy House. And just like that, I had my first real lead. They thought they could erase me, bury the truth with silence and shame. But I still had a voice. And I had a name. And now, I had a photo. The storm was far from over. But for the first time, I wasn't just running from the past. I was walking into it. The bus ride from Maple Hollow to Charleston, West Virginia, took 6 hours. I sat by the window the whole time, the photo of Clara and Silas clutched in my hand like a compass pointing home. Every bump in the road brought back another memory, some sweet, like Eldon's voice humming by the porch swing, others dark, like the cold silence of the barn after childbirth. When the bus finally hissed to a stop, I stepped onto the pavement with knees that weren't what they used to be, but a spirit more determined than ever. The New Mercy House sat at the edge of a quiet road lined with pines. It looked nothing like an orphanage now, more like a cozy counseling center.
Clean siding.
Wind chimes on the porch. A welcome sign painted in warm colors. Hope begins here.
Hope.
That word had haunted me for decades. I walked through the doors slowly. A young woman at the front desk looked up and smiled. She couldn't have been older than 25. Hi, welcome to New Mercy. Can I help you? I stepped forward, suddenly aware of how worn my coat was, how tired my eyes must have looked. but I held my head high and slid the photo across the counter. I'm looking for information. These two children were here once, around 1967. Her name was Clara May, and the boy might have been Silas. They were mine. The girl's smile faded into gentle concern. She picked up the photo carefully, scanned the back, and nodded slowly. Just a moment. Let me check our archives. She disappeared down the hallway, leaving me alone with the sound of a ticking clock and the rush of blood in my ears. Minutes passed. Then footsteps. But they weren't hers. A man stepped into the lobby.
Tall.
Gray at the temples. Maybe in his early 70s. He wore a brown jacket and held a weathered envelope in one hand. Our eyes locked. He froze. "Are you," he asked softly, his voice rough with disbelief, "are you May Ruth Carter?"
I didn't answer right away.
My throat tightened. My hands gripped the back of the waiting chair like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "Yes," I said finally. "I am." His face crumbled. Not in anger, not in fear, but in recognition. "I came here 2 weeks ago," he said, stepping closer. "I've been searching for over 40 years. They told me the records were sealed, that my mother died during childbirth." He opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out a faded birth certificate. The name read, Ezekiel Arlen Renley. Mother, May Ruth Carter. "I knew it," I whispered. "I knew you were still out there." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the same photo I had of Clara and Silas. "My sister Clara gave this to me before she passed," he said, his voice cracking. "She spent years trying to find you. Said she remembered a voice singing lullabies through the walls." My knees buckled. I sat down before I could collapse. Ezekiel knelt beside me and held my hand. For the first time since that barn, since that horror, I felt safe. "I'm so sorry," I wept. "I should have found you sooner."
I didn't know how.
I was so broken. He squeezed my hand gently. "You weren't broken. You were buried. But now you're rising." Just then, the front desk girl returned, holding a file. "There were 8 kids listed from that time period with no known parents," she said. 2 are confirmed, Clara and Silas. The others might match if we dig deeper. I looked at Ezekiel. "We're not done, are we?" He smiled through his tears. "Not even close." Together, we sat at the table, opening files, tracing names, following the fragile threads of memory and paper. 10 lives scattered like seeds in a storm. And now, one by one, we were bringing them home. We sat at a long wooden table in the records room of New Mercy House, the air thick with silence and the weight of too many years gone. Ezekiel sat across from me, sleeves rolled up, a pencil behind his ear. A man raised by strangers, now helping me find the children who were stolen from both of us. The girl at the desk, Melissa, her name was, laid out the files like a puzzle we'd been waiting decades to solve. Birth records, foster transfer notes, orphanage photos, some labeled, most not. She wasn't supposed to let us see half of it, but I think she saw something in our eyes. We were not here to stir trouble. We were here to stitch together what had been ripped apart. The names came slowly, like forgotten songs returning one note at a time. Delia Ruth Carter. Adopted 1968. Location, Ohio. New name, Della Rowan. Silas Carter. Missing from system 1971. No further documentation. Last seen with Clara May Carter. Clara May Carter. Deceased, 1999. Cause, cancer. Died in a group home in Richmond, Virginia. No known next of kin. I had to stop after reading Clara's file. My hand went to my mouth as I stared at the paper. I'd written her a letter just last week, thinking she might still be out there. "She knew you existed," Ezekiel said softly. "She remembered your voice. She used to hum songs to me when I was scared. I think they were yours." Tears blurred my eyes. "I should have found her sooner. She didn't die alone," he added. "She had a daughter. Her name's Faith. She's my niece. And yours." That word hit me like sunlight.
Niece.
Something still lived from Clara. Suddenly, every loss felt a little less empty. Melissa handed us another file. This one was stamped confidential in red ink. Winnie Carter, no adoption. Transferred to state facility. Multiple incidents reported. Institutionalized. I clutched the table. No. The report was brutal. Winnie had shown signs of severe trauma. Moved from group homes to detention centers. Diagnosed with schizophrenia by age 15. In and out of institutions ever since. She's still alive, Melissa said. Current location, Bright Pines Mental Facility, Lexington, Kentucky. I have to see her, I whispered. But Ezekiel put a gentle hand on mine. Not yet. Let's find the others first. Let's go in with names, not just grief. I nodded. He was right. I couldn't lose myself before we finished what we started. Then Melissa pulled a final folder from the pile, her brows furrowed. This one is odd. She turned it around and slid it toward us. The name at the top read, Tobiah Renley, sealed by court order. Request filed by guardian, Jeremiah Wade. My stomach turned to stone. Jeremiah? I said, my voice dry. My son-in-law? Ezekiel looked up slowly. That can't be a coincidence. Melissa looked between us, confused. You know him? I nodded slowly, heart racing. He married my daughter, Laureen, the one who kicked me out. Ezekiel flipped through the file. The records were thin, but the name appeared again, Jeremiah listed as guardian in 1985. The same year Tobiah vanished from the system. Are you saying your daughter and her husband raised one of your stolen children? Ezekiel asked. My hands trembled as I whispered. She knew. All these years, she said I was crazy, that I lived in the past. But she must have known something. And she never told me. My thoughts spiraled. Was Tobiah living in my house this whole time? Had I passed him in the hallway? Called him sweet names? Not knowing I'd once rocked him in a barn by lantern light? A child raised beside my granddaughter as her cousin, when in truth, he was her uncle. Did you want to confront her? Ezekiel asked carefully. I took a breath. Not yet. I want to find Tobiah first. Because this wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. This was about truth. About legacy. About untangling the lies that span generations. One child was gone. One was waiting. One had been hidden in plain sight. And 7 more were still shadows. But I was done being afraid of the dark. I stood at the bottom of the gravel driveway I once swept every Saturday morning, back when Laureen was still a child and Eldon was still alive. The hydrangeas I planted decades ago were overgrown and wild, like they too had given up on being tended to. Beside me stood Ezekiel, my son. My firstborn. The one they told me was dead, now holding my arm steady as my knees threatened to buckle. It had been 2 weeks since we found the file. 2 weeks since we learned that Tobiah, one of the 10 children ripped from my arms, had been raised by Laureen and Jeremiah. 2 weeks of sleepless nights and impossible questions. Did she know? Did she hide him from me? Did he know who he was? We walked up the path slowly. My coat was buttoned to the neck. I was trembling, but not from cold. From truth. From what had to be said. Laureen answered the door herself.
She froze when she saw me.
Her eyes flicked to Ezekiel, then back to me, then back to him. Mom, she said finally, her voice clipped. What are you doing here? I looked her dead in the eyes. You told me to leave. But now, I'm here to tell you the truth. She crossed her arms. What truth? That one of the children they stole from me, you raised him. As your own son. You let me live under the same roof as him without telling me who he was. Without even telling him. Her jaw twitched. I don't know what you're talking about. Ezekiel stepped forward, his voice steady. His name is Tobiah. Your husband filed guardianship in 1985. He was adopted out of the same system that trafficked our family. That's not a coincidence. Laureen blinked. For a moment, the wall cracked. Then she snapped. I was trying to protect you, she hissed. You were unstable. You lived in your memories, talking about babies that never existed. Jeremiah found Tobiah at a group home. He felt sorry for him. We gave him a life. And you robbed him of his identity. I said, my voice sharp as steel. Just like they robbed it from me. She stepped back. You don't get to judge me. You never had to make choices. You just ran. You hid. I didn't hide, I said quietly. I survived. And I raised you with every drop of love I had left. You spit it out like poison. The hallway behind her creaked. A tall young man appeared, maybe in his 30s. Broad-shouldered, soft eyes. A faint birthmark just below his right ear. He looked at us, confused. What's going on? Lorraine stiffened. Nothing, honey, go back to. This is him, isn't it? Ezekiel interrupted. The man's gaze narrowed. What are you talking about? I stepped forward. Tobiah, I said gently, tears pooling in my eyes. My name is May Ruth Carter. I gave birth to you. You were taken from me. He stared at me, his face blank. Then he turned to Lorraine. Mom, he asked. Is this true? She swallowed hard. Tobiah, You lied to me? His voice cracked. You lied to me about who I was? I could see the war behind his eyes. Everything was falling, one truth at a time. I reached into my coat pocket and handed him the faded birth certificate.
He stared at it for a long time.
Then slowly, he sat down on the porch step. I always felt off, he murmured. Like something was missing. I thought I was crazy for wanting to know. For wondering why you never treated me the same. Lorraine was shaking now. Tobiah, I raised you. I loved you. But it wasn't your truth to control, he said, not even looking at her. Ezekiel sat beside him. You're my brother. I've waited my whole life to meet you. They stared at each other for a long moment. Two strangers connected by blood, by trauma, by something deeper than words. Finally, Tobiah turned to me. I don't know what to say, he whispered. I took a breath. You don't have to say anything, baby. Just know you were never forgotten. You were never unloved. And no matter what happens now, I'm here. He reached out slowly and took my hand. And in that moment, something healed. Later that evening, after the dust settled, Lorraine stood quietly on the porch while we packed to leave. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I nodded. Good. Because this wasn't about forgiveness. Then what was it about? I looked her dead in the eye.
Truth.
Closure. And reclaiming what was mine. She didn't respond. We walked away, not out of weakness, but strength. I had come to that house as a ghost. I left as a mother, a grandmother, a survivor, and the beginning of a legacy that would never again be erased.